Welcome back, everybody, to the Renaissance Humanism podcast. In today's episode, I'll be discussing why Russia might lose the Russian Far East. That'll be the purpose of this episode. So let's get the show on the road. The Russian demographics have declined for nearly half a century due to instability in Russia in the 1990s and the collapse of the Russian higher education system in the 1980s, in the mid 1980s. These particularly in fields of technological development, in the fields of engineering. That's not the social sciences, is the stuff that actually really matters if you want to keep a society industrialized and develop new technologies. Not that social sciences aren't important, but the hard sciences, the engineering, that is also critical to the development of a society's technology. Furthermore, in the 1990s, in the aftermath of the Cold War, from 1945 to 1989, the collapse of the Soviet regime in Russia in 1990 gave Russia a decade of instability and internal wars, which reduced the chance of its young people actually having children. People don't have kids if they don't feel safe or are concerned about the economy. A fantastic example of this is the Japanese population. It has had replacement levels since the late 1970s due to the 1973 oil crisis. The 1970s oil crisis was caused primarily due to the October Yom Kippur War, or the Fourth Arab-Israeli War in 1973. The organization OPEC, which was led by the Arab-producing oil states such as Saudi Arabia, they increased the supply of oil as well. They did that in order to the United States and other Western nations that were supporting the state of Israel. And they did this just because they wanted to try and influence other states not to support Israel and also try and galvanize support as well within the Arab communities. This is all relevant to Russia as well because Russians, like the Japanese, like themselves in the 1990s, chose not to have children because they didn't feel safe, even though that actually fear might not actually be unfounded. But today, one reason for the decline of birth rate is because if people watch social media, if people watch the news, like for example, what's happening at the moment in October and this November, as I'm doing this now, is that people are seeing the Hamas Israeli war on the televisions, and people don't realize that the human mind, we don't understand what is actually real, what's in relative to what we're seeing, because we're absorbing information. So if people absorb negative information, they'll use that information and they'll apply it to the rest of their lives as well. Because at the moment, I'm doing this in the north of England, in Yorkshire. I'm completely safe. But if people see what's happening in Israel and also protests happening in England and the Western world, they might not feel safe, even though they actually are safe. It's just word perception versus reality. That's the thing with humans. It's not just what is real, what we believe is real. So if we believe that's real, that is real to us, even though it's not actually real. That's why people don't have children as well. Uh, for the Russia's, this is relevant to Russia as well, because Russia at the moment has a population of around 140 million, with in the Far East, the bulk of its population is in the Western Russia, Western Central Russia. In the Far East, Russia only has a population of 6.4 million. The Chinese have a population of approximately 1.4 billion, and they're heavily settling in the Russian regions in the Far East as well. So using its population to actually bring that kind of territory under Chinese control. The Chinese use this same strategy in the Tibetan region and the Xinjiang region of China. See, Tibetan regions, they're flooding the area with Chinese immigrants settling the area. So now there's chance now that in Tibet, there's actually more Han Chinese ethnic group than native Tibetans. Same as all happening in the Xinjiang region, which is also historically predominantly Muslim. Now it's being converted into the Han Chinese minority. So that's what the Chinese do. They use their population as a means to weaponize control over areas because for Western democratic nations, uh, for example, there's an issue in South America over the Falkland Islands for Argentina. But as long as the people in Argentina vote to remain part of the United Kingdom, they'll remain part of the United Kingdom. And the Argentinians, they're also now at least a democracy on paper. They are a democratic society. So as long as they are democratic society, they can't actually go and take it. That means for Western nations, if we complain about Tibet and Xinjiang, if the majority of the population is Han Chinese, then due to our own moral ethics, we can't do anything about it. And the same is going to happen in Russia as well, because China is using its population. Also, China suffered 100 years of humiliation from 1839 to 1947, And this is why the Chinese Communist Party want to restore Greater China, and that means retaking Greater Manchuria, because during the time of Imperial Russia in the 19th century, they seized Greater Manchuria, and that's what the China want to get that back as well. So they do have historical claims, and also a lot of old scores settled. Now, with China being the world's number 2 economy, and also transferring its strength into military power and using massive population, than its old rivals, its old enemies, and also trying to maintain and take back its old territories. That's what we'll be seeing this century. That's why the Russian Far East, there's a very strong chance it will be absorbed by Greater China.